The sound of a single coin echoed louder than jet engines. It rolled off the tray table, bounced once, and vanished beneath the seat in front of her. Maribel Cruz froze, not because of the noise, but because it was one of the last coins she owned. 37 cents that separated her from absolute nothing. The plane was still climbing through night, silver light spilling through the cabin windows, and she was trying to make $11.72 feel like a plan instead of an obituary. Camilla, her 7-month-old daughter, slept against her chest, her tiny breath warm through the worn fabric of Maribel's hoodie. The baby's fever had broken that morning, but her skin still carried a trace of heat. The child had been her reason to board this flight, and the reason she'd nearly canceled it. Maribel's brother Lucas was gone. The funeral waited in Seattle. So did questions she couldn't afford to answer. The man beside her hadn't spoken once since boarding. He'd nodded politely when she squeezed past him to her seat, then returned to his laptop and the soft hum of wealth that never needed explanation. He was dressed in a way that screamed effortless expense. Silver cufflinks, a navy shirt, a watch that could buy her a year of rent. She'd noticed him because everyone did. Flight attendants smiled a little wider. Passengers gave him space. Maribel had planned to stay invisible, but then the napkin appeared on her tray. A folded square, plain white, the kind you'd get with coffee. Resting on top of it, a $50 bill. Crisp, uncreased. Her heart stuttered. She glanced sideways. The man hadn't looked up from his screen. He typed, expression unreadable. "You dropped this," he said, his tone so casual it sounded like truth. She blinked. "I didn't." He lifted a finger, eyes still on his laptop. "Then maybe someone else did." Her throat went dry. She wanted to refuse, to give it back, to keep her dignity intact. But her hands disobeyed, trembling as they folded the napkin shut and slipped it into the side pocket of her diaper bag. It wasn't the money, it was the mercy in disguise. For the rest of the flight, she sat rigid, caught between gratitude and humiliation. The engines droned, the cabin lights dimmed, and somewhere over the dark stretch of clouds, she finally allowed herself to breathe. When the wheels touched down, dawn hadn't fully arrived. The sky was a bruise-colored gray, and the airport buzzed with the sluggish rhythm of travelers chasing connections or sleep. Maribel gathered her things slowly. Formula can, baby blanket, her battered wallet with the same $12 it had yesterday, and waited until the aisle emptied. She didn't want to face him again, but when she reached the terminal, he was waiting by the exit. She stopped short. "Did I forget something?" He shook his head. "No." "Then why?" "You're heading to the city, right?" he said, glancing at the car seat cradled in her arm. "I have a car waiting. I can drop you off." Maribel's first instinct was suspicion. "You don't even know me." "True," he said evenly, "but I know what exhaustion looks like." She hesitated, rocking Camilla gently. The child whimpered, waking with a soft cry. Every nerve in Maribel's body wanted to say no. But outside, the morning light revealed a thin mist of rain, and her phone's rideshare app glared back with prices that mocked her poverty. "Fine," she said, voice low. "Just to the bus station." He nodded once. "Deal." The car, a sleek black SUV that smelled faintly of cedar and rain, pulled up silently. The driver greeted the man by name. "Mr. Hale." Maribel blinked. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. They drove in silence for several minutes. The city's skyline unfolded in pale silhouettes. "Seattle's colder than I remember," he said finally, almost to himself. "You've been before?" "I live here," he said. "You?" She stared out the window. "Used to. My brother lived here." His gaze shifted. "You said used to." She swallowed hard. "He passed away last week. I'm here for the funeral." The air in the car changed, less space, more gravity. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "I'm sorry." She didn't reply. Words like that were too tidy for the mess grief left behind. They drove another block in silence. Then she said, "He worked at a construction site. There was an accident." Something flickered across Nathan's face. Something sharp, then gone. "What was his name?" "Lucas Cruz." The car slowed at a red light. He turned to look at her fully now. His calm cracked open. Lucas Cruz, he repeated, as if testing the syllables against memory. He saved my life. Maribel's breath caught. What? Nathan nodded slowly. A beam collapsed at the site 5 years ago. I was there, touring the property for an acquisition. He shoved me out of the way before it hit. He walked away with a broken arm. I walked away owing him my life. Maribel stared at him, words caught in her throat. He never told me. He just said he got hurt at work. He wouldn't have, Nathan said quietly. He didn't want recognition. He laughed when I tried to thank him. She turned toward the window again, eyes stinging. Rain streaked across the glass, blurring the city. When the car stopped outside the bus terminal, she fumbled for something to say. Nothing fit. Thank you, she murmured, reaching for the handle. Maribel, he said, her name landing with quiet certainty. Let me help. You already did, she said. That napkin was enough. He smiled faintly. Then maybe this is my turn to return a favor. She shook her head. You don't owe anyone. I owe your brother, he said softly, and I think he'd want me to find you. The rain deepened outside, drumming steady against the windshield. She stood there, one foot on the curb, torn between pride and need. Just give me a ride tomorrow, she said finally. To the funeral home. He nodded. Tomorrow. As the car pulled away, she watched its tail lights blur into the rain. For the first time in months, the world didn't feel entirely cruel. Somewhere between clouds and pavement, a stranger had remembered her brother, and in doing so, remembered her. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It fell in fine, silvery lines outside the motel window, blurring the neon sign into a tired glow. Maribel sat on the edge of the bed, feeding Camilla her bottle in slow rhythm, trying not to count the dollars left in her pouch. The heater hummed weakly. Her clothes still smelled faintly of the airport, metal, stale air, and exhaustion. She hadn't expected Nathan to actually show up. Men like him didn't wait for people like her. Yet when the knock came, 3 even taps, her chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Come in, she called softly. The door opened and he stepped inside, carrying 2 coffees and a paper bag. He was dressed in gray slacks and a dark coat, somehow looking as though the weather obeyed him. I didn't know what you eat, he said, so I guessed. Maribel accepted the coffee, careful not to touch his fingers. You didn't have to. I know, he said, but I wanted to. The smell of the coffee nearly undid her composure. It was the expensive kind, the kind that didn't taste burnt or watery. She took a cautious sip, then nodded toward the bag. What's in there? Something that used to be breakfast, he said. It survived the drive. Inside were 2 sandwiches, still warm, and a small pack of grapes. Her stomach clenched, and for a second she hated herself for the way her hands shook. They ate quietly, the soft patter of rain filling the silence. Camilla finished her bottle, yawned, and drifted off again, her tiny fists unclenched. Nathan watched her, his expression softening in a way that made him seem years younger. She looks better, he said. The fever's gone, Maribel replied. For now. He nodded. Good. When they finished, she wiped her hands on a napkin, hesitant. About yesterday, you didn't have to drive me, or stay. I told you, he said gently. Your brother saved my life. I'm only returning what I owe. Maribel looked down. Lucas never mentioned it. He never mentioned anyone important. Nathan gave a short laugh, not mocking but distant. I'm not sure important is the word he'd use. She studied him then. You don't seem like someone who spends time at construction sites. I didn't, he said, eyes fixed on the rain. Back then, I was still learning what I thought power was. Money, status, deals. I'd bought the company he worked for. I was touring the site when it happened. And he saved you, she said quietly. Without hesitation, Nathan replied. Just shouted something and shoved me out of the way. I remember hitting the ground and looking up to see him pinned under a beam. He laughed. Said, guess I broke your floor plan. Nathan smiled faintly. He refused to take anything for it. Said I'd just use the story for good press. He wasn't wrong. Maribel laughed softly, even as tears stung her eyes. That sounds like him, always saying things that made sense 3 days later. He was a good man, Nathan said simply, The kind people underestimate because they don't understand decency until it's gone. The words hung between them like a thread, fragile, real. After a moment, Maribel reached for Camilla's blanket and adjusted it. "You said you wanted to come to the funeral," she said. "Why?" Nathan's answer came slowly. "Because I never thanked him, and because I think he'd want me there for you." "For me?" "You're his family," he said. "And whether you like it or not, that means I owe you something too." Maribel looked up sharply. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," he said quietly. "Not because of him, because of me. I spent years pretending gratitude was a transaction. It isn't. It's supposed to change you." The rain outside softened to a mist. Maribel turned the words over in her head, uncertain how to hold them. After a while, Nathan checked his watch. "We should leave soon. Traffic's worse in the rain." She nodded, wrapping Camilla in her small faded blanket. "I'm ready." The funeral home smelled of lilies and rain-soaked carpet. A handful of people lingered near the front. Men from Lucas's crew, a few neighbors, her uncle. Maribel stood near the casket, the world tilting around her. The photo propped up beside the flowers caught him mid-laugh, the same grin that could talk her out of a bad day. Nathan stood near the back, silent, respectful. He didn't belong in the room, not in his polished shoes or tailored coat, but he stood there anyway, as if determined to earn his place in this small world of grief. When it was her turn to speak, Maribel didn't read from the paper she'd written. She couldn't. Instead, she looked at the photo and said, "He was the kind of man who fixed things that weren't his to fix. He helped everyone, even when he shouldn't have. Maybe that's why he's gone." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was done needing him, but I was wrong." Someone behind her sniffled. She didn't turn. When the service ended, Nathan waited until the room emptied before approaching. "He'd be proud of you," he said quietly. "You didn't even know me," she whispered. "I know what kind of sister raises a man like that," he replied. "It doesn't take knowing you. It takes seeing him." She couldn't meet his eyes. "You talk like someone who already knows how the story ends." "I don't," he said, "but I know this isn't it." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photograph, creased, worn. It showed two men in hard hats, one grinning and one startled mid-laugh. Maribel gasped. "You kept that?" "Every day," he said. "It reminded me that good people still exist." Tears welled in her eyes again, blurring the image. "He would have liked that." Nathan handed her the photo. "Keep it. Maybe it can remind you too." She hesitated, then took it. Their fingers brushed. Brief, electric, human. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sky was pale and uncertain, like it hadn't yet decided what kind of day it wanted to be. Maribel tucked the photo into her jacket, pressing it close to her heart. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "It's not thanks I want," he said. "It's trust." And for the first time since Lucas's death, she didn't feel completely alone. The motel room was colder than she remembered. By the time Maribel returned from the funeral, Camilla was already asleep in her carrier, cheeks flushed from exhaustion. She set the baby on the bed, peeled off her damp jacket, and sat on the worn carpet. For the first time since she'd left Austin, the silence pressed against her like weight. There were no more plans to make, no more reasons to keep moving. Just the kind of stillness that made you hear your own heartbeat and wonder what it was for. She looked at the photo Nathan had given her. Lucas's grin was crooked as ever, the same smile that used to get them both in trouble. Beside him, Nathan looked younger, hair windswept, expression surprised, like he hadn't been ready for gratitude even then. The memory burned. He saved someone's life, and he never told me. Her phone buzzed, startling her. A text from an unknown number. "You left before I could make sure you got back safe." N. Maribel stared at it, thumb hovering. She didn't know what to say. Gratitude, refusal? None of it seemed right. Finally, she typed back, "We did. Thank you." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then a single message arrived. "Good. Sleep if you can." She smiled despite herself. "Bossy," she murmured, setting the phone aside. It rained again the next morning. Maribel stood by the vending machine in the motel hallway, her hair pulled into a loose bun, watching the coffee drip into a paper cup. Camilla gurgled softly in her arms, clutching a pacifier like it was treasure. When she turned, Nathan was already there. He leaned casually against the wall, coffee in hand, like he'd just materialized from the rain. "Good morning," he said. "You left your umbrella in my car." She blinked. "You tracked me down for that?" "Umbrellas are underrated," he said, "especially in this city. You could have texted." "I could have," he said, smiling faintly. "But then I wouldn't have seen if you're okay." Maribel's pulse tripped. "We're fine," she said quickly. "You don't have to check on us." "I know." His voice was steady, without ego or guilt. "But I wanted to," she sighed. "You say that a lot." "That's because it's true a lot." Before she could argue, he handed her a small paper bag. "Breakfast. And before you protest, it's from the cafe next door, not room service." She opened the bag to find a croissant sandwich and a small container of fruit. "You don't stop, do you?" "No," he said. "It's a flaw." She laughed quietly. "Yeah, a terrible one." They ate at the small table by the window while Camilla babbled in her carrier. The city beyond the glass was blurred by mist, people hurrying beneath umbrellas, cars sliding past puddles. For once, Maribel didn't feel like the world was moving without her. Nathan leaned back, studying her. "What's your plan now?" She swallowed a sip of coffee. "There isn't one. I'll go home after the weekend. Find another job. Maybe two." "You worked before?" "Cafe cashier, cleaning houses, grocery clerk." She smiled faintly. "Nothing glamorous." He tilted his head. "And what did you want to do? Before everything?" The question startled her. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked that. "I wanted to draw," she said softly. "Illustration, children's books. I used to make little stories for Lucas. He said they were better than TV." "They probably were," Nathan said. She laughed. "That's kind of you." "It's honest," he said. "The world could use more stories that start small." Maribel met his gaze, feeling something unfamiliar. Safety, maybe. Or the echo of something she'd lost and didn't expect to find again. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "All of it. The rides, the food, the kindness." He hesitated, then looked down at his coffee. "Because I remember what it's like to think no one's coming." His words landed quietly, but they rearranged the air around them. She frowned. "You said you don't have family?" "I had," he said softly. "My wife and son. Mason. He was 8 months old when he got sick. We did everything right. Doctors, specialists. Still," he stopped, staring at a point on the table that wasn't there. "Some nights I used to think if I'd been a better man, maybe he'd have made it." Maribel's throat tightened. "Nathan, He waved her off gently. "It's all right. That was a long time ago. But it doesn't leave you. Not really." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest. The kind that can only exist between people who have both survived something that should have ended them. After a moment, he smiled faintly. "That's why I keep showing up, Maribel. Not to fix you, just to remind myself that showing up matters." She looked down at Camilla, who had fallen asleep again, her tiny fist curled near her mouth. "You think she'll remember any of this?" "No," he said, "but you will. And someday, when she's old enough to need it, you'll give it back to someone else. That's how these things work." She nodded slowly, the weight of his words settling somewhere deep. "Lucas would have liked you," he smiled. "He already did." When Nathan finally left, the room felt warmer than before. Maribel packed her things slowly, folding each piece of clothing with care she hadn't used in years. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city gleamed as though it had been scrubbed clean. Before stepping out, she looked once more at the photo of Lucas and Nathan. Then she slipped it into her pocket like a promise. The next day, she'd take the bus to her brother's old neighborhood and scatter his ashes by the lake. Not because she believed in ritual, but because she finally understood what Lucas had meant when he said, "We don't live for ourselves, Mar. We live for what survives us." She had thought he meant blood. Now she knew he meant kindness. And maybe she thought kindness could be inherited too. That night, the rain returned, heavier than before. It rattled against the motel window like impatient fingers. Maribel had almost drifted to sleep when Camilla's soft whimper broke through the hum of the heater. At first, she thought it was just a bad dream. But when she touched her daughter's forehead, her breath caught heat. Not the lingering kind from a blanket, but the alarming kind that burned through skin and into panic. Not again, she whispered, fumbling for the small thermometer in her bag. She waited for the beep, her pulse counting with it. 102.8. Too high. She gave her a dose of the infant fever medicine, the last one she had, and cradled her close. "It's okay, baby. You're okay." But the words didn't calm her. Camilla's cry deepened, raspy and sharp, the kind that tears through a mother's calm. Maribel's hands shook as she rocked her. She wanted to believe the medicine would work, that in a few minutes the fever would break. But the clock kept moving, and the baby only grew hotter. Her pride wavered under the weight of fear. She reached for her phone before she could talk herself out of it. Nathan answered on the second ring. "Maribel," she tried to steady her voice. It's her fever. It's high. I don't know what to do." "I'm on my way," he said. No questions, no hesitation. "Keep her cool. Don't give her more medicine yet. I'll be there in 10." 10 minutes. It felt like an hour. Maribel pressed a damp cloth to Camilla's neck, whispering lullabies that quivered out of her. By the time headlights cut across the motel window, her chest hurt from holding her breath. Nathan didn't knock. He moved straight into action the second she opened the door. His hair was soaked, his coat dripping rain, but his voice stayed even. "Let me see her." He checked her temperature again, brows tight. "We need to go to the hospital." Maribel's throat constricted. "I can't. Nathan, I can't afford." He met her eyes. "You can't afford not to." The way he said it, steady, no pity, no lecture, stripped away every argument. She nodded. "Okay." He wrapped Camilla in a dry blanket and carried her out himself, shielding her from the rain like she was made of light. The emergency room smelled of disinfectant and coffee left too long on a burner. Bright lights cut through the fog of panic. Nathan handled the paperwork while Maribel sat in triage, clutching her baby's hand, whispering prayers she hadn't said in years. The nurse took Camilla's vitals, her tone calm but brisk. "She's dehydrated. We'll give her fluids and monitor her fever. You did the right thing bringing her in." Maribel wanted to believe that, but her insides were shaking. When the nurse left, Nathan sat beside her. His sleeves were rolled up, his shirt damp from rain. "She's in good hand," he said. Maribel stared at the IV taped to her daughter's tiny arm. "She's just a baby," she whispered. "She shouldn't have to go through this." Nathan nodded. "No one should. But she's strong. You both are." The words made something inside her crumble. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to stifle the sob that broke free anyway. He didn't say anything, just reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. Not invasive, not possessive. Just there, solid. "I hate feeling helpless," she said finally. "Then you understand me better than most," he murmured. She frowned. "What do you mean?" Nathan leaned back, eyes distant. "When my son was in the hospital, I used to sit just like this, waiting for machines to tell me he was winning, pretending I could fix it by being there." Maribel turned to him, surprised. "You told me he got sick, but not that—" "He didn't make it," Nathan said quietly. 8 months old, same age as her. The room went still. The rhythmic beeping from the monitor seemed louder, crueler. "I'm sorry," Maribel whispered. He shook his head. "Don't be. I used to think losing him was punishment for everything I did wrong. The ambition, the arrogance, but grief doesn't make sense. It just finds you." She studied his face, the way his jaw tightened when he talked about it. "Is that why you helped me?" "In part," he admitted, "but mostly because your brother helped me first. I owe both of you more than I can ever repay." "You don't have to repay anything," she said softly. "Lucas never did things expecting something back." "I know," Nathan said, "but some debts aren't about balance. They're about doing something good with what's left." The words sank deep into her. She looked down at Camilla, her tiny hand twitching in sleep, her fever finally easing under the fluids. Maribel exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. "She's cooler." Nathan smiled faintly. "Told you she's tough." For the first time in hours, Maribel allowed herself to breathe. The exhaustion hit all at once, dragging her head down against the edge of the hospital chair. Sleep, Nathan said gently. I'll be right here. She wanted to protest, but her body betrayed her. Within minutes, she drifted off to the steady sound of her daughter's heartbeat monitor and Nathan's quiet breathing beside her. When she woke again, it was dawn. The rain had stopped. Pale light filtered through the blinds, softening the edges of everything. Camilla was sleeping peacefully, color back in her cheeks. The nurse was adjusting her IV. Nathan was still there, sitting in the same chair, a blanket draped over his shoulders. You stayed, Maribel said, voice rough. He looked up, half smiling. I told you I would. Her throat tightened. You didn't have to. I know, he said, but I wanted to. The same words again, but this time she didn't argue. She looked at her daughter and then back at him. Thank you, Nathan, for showing up. He met her gaze steadily. You don't have to thank me. Just promise me something. What? When life gets better, and it will, don't stop showing up for someone else. She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I can do that. He smiled faintly. Then we're even. Maribel looked back at her daughter, breathing deep, steady breaths. For the first time since Lucas's death, she believed Nathan might be right. Maybe life could get better. And maybe, just maybe, this was where it began. The morning after Camilla was discharged, Seattle looked almost kind. The storm had washed the streets clean, leaving puddles that reflected soft light and tired people starting their day. Maribel stood on the curb outside the hospital, Camilla nestled against her chest, and for once, she didn't feel like running. Nathan was across the parking lot, talking quietly to a nurse, his coat slung over one arm. He looked like someone who belonged in the world again. Not in a boardroom, not behind a wall of glass, but here, among ordinary people doing the fragile work of surviving. When he returned, he held out a paper bag. Breakfast, muffins, coffee, and something that's supposed to be orange juice. She smiled. You must think I can't feed myself. He shrugged. I think it's easier when someone else remembers for you. They sat on a bench near the entrance, watching the morning traffic. Maribel tore the muffin into small pieces, passing bits to Nathan between bites just to see if he'd accept them. He did, without hesitation. Camilla slept, her hand curled around her mother's collar like an anchor. So, Nathan said finally, what happens now? I find a place to stay, Maribel said, and then a job. I'll figure the rest out. He nodded, but something flickered across his expression, a decision already forming. You shouldn't have to do that alone. I've been doing everything alone for a long time. Maybe it's time to try something different. She looked at him. Nathan, I can't be your charity project. It's not charity, he said, tone even. It's respect. Your brother gave me a life I wasn't living right. You've reminded me what it's supposed to mean. Maribel shook her head. I don't need saving. He met her gaze without flinching. I didn't say you did. There was no pity in his voice, only quiet certainty. It disarmed her more than any generosity could. 2 days later, he asked her to meet him near Green Lake. She almost said no, but curiosity, and maybe something like trust, made her go. He was waiting in front of a small brick building with ivy climbing its walls. A keychain jingled in his hand. What is this? She asked, shifting Camilla's weight on her hip. He smiled slightly. Your new beginning. He opened the door to reveal a small apartment, sunlight pooling through wide windows, the smell of fresh paint and possibility filling the air. There was a couch, a kitchen, even a tiny crib by the wall. Maribel froze. Nathan, it's for you and Camilla, he said. 6 months rent paid. No strings. Her heartbeat stumbled. I can't take this. Yes, you can. She turned on him, anger and disbelief tangling in her chest. You don't understand. Things like this, they don't happen to people like me. I've spent my whole life cleaning apartments like this for other people. He stepped closer, his tone soft but firm. Then think of it as claiming one you deserve. She shook her head, voice trembling. And when 6 months are up, what then? I'll still be the same person with the same struggles. Maybe, Nathan said, but you'll be standing somewhere safe when you face them. She stared at him, torn between gratitude and fear of owing too much. You can't just give people homes, Nathan. It's not that simple. Maybe it is, he said. Maybe we just make it complicated because it feels easier than doing something real. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sunlight warmed the floor between them. Finally, she whispered, "Why me?" "Because you remind me what redemption looks like," he said, "and because Lucas would have done the same for me." Her throat tightened. She thought of her brother's grin, his rough hands, his unshakable belief that good things were contagious if you let them spread. She lowered her voice. "He used to say the same thing, that life's just passing forward what someone else gave you." Nathan smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're both just doing what he taught us." Later, after he left, Maribel walked through the apartment in slow disbelief. She traced the windowsill with her fingertips, opened the cupboard doors just to hear them close again. Camilla's tiny giggles echoed in the new, empty space like bells. She sat on the floor and wrote a letter she'd never send. "Lucas, you wouldn't believe this. There's light everywhere, even when it rains. A man you saved is saving me now, though he doesn't see it that way. He says it's about redemption, but I think it's about remembering how to be kind. I used to think help was humiliation, but maybe it's just another word for trust. I'll make this place ours." You'd laugh at the crib. "It's too fancy." You'd say, "Don't let her grow up thinking the world's crueler than it is." "I'll try, I promise. I miss you, but I think you'd like who I'm becoming." When she finished, she tucked the letter into the drawer beside the bed and let Camilla sleep in the crib for the first time. The room felt impossibly quiet, yet full, like the space between two heartbeats. Maribel turned off the light and stood at the window. The lake shimmered in the distance, reflecting the city's pulse. She realized, maybe for the first time, that she wasn't afraid of tomorrow, because tomorrow had finally stopped being something that happened to her. Now it was something she could begin to build. The apartment didn't feel real for the first few days. Maribel kept expecting someone to knock on the door, to tell her there had been a mistake, that the lease was meant for someone else. She cleaned surfaces that were already clean, folded the same towels twice, and checked on Camilla every hour, half afraid the crib would vanish the moment she looked away. But the key on her chain was solid. The windows opened to let in the lake breeze. The morning light belonged to her now. Every evening, Nathan called to check in. Not intrusive, just enough to remind her that she wasn't invisible. Sometimes he brought groceries or little things she'd never think to buy herself. A small plant for the windowsill, a new set of mugs, a book about picture book illustration. One evening, he appeared with takeout boxes and 2 paper cups of coffee. "I was in the neighborhood," he said, though she suspected that wasn't entirely true. "Do billionaires often find themselves in the neighborhood?" she teased, setting Camilla in her high chair. "Only the ones with good GPS, he said, smiling, "in terrible boundaries." She rolled her eyes but didn't send him away. They ate quietly, the smell of sesame oil and rain filling the space. Camilla clapped her hands at nothing in particular, delighted simply by being alive. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "You've made this place yours already." Maribel looked around. The small kitchen, the soft light bouncing off the walls. "It still feels temporary," she admitted, "like I'm borrowing a dream." He nodded. "That feeling doesn't go away overnight, but it fades the first time you wake up and forget to doubt it." She glanced at him. "Did you?" "What? Ever feel like that? Like you didn't belong in your own life?" He smiled faintly, gaze lowering to his coffee. "Every day. I just learned to hide it better." "Seems like you hide everything well." He gave a small laugh. "That's the problem with people like me. We mistake control for peace, and when it breaks, we don't know how to live with the noise." Maribel studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "You don't sound like a man who has everything." "Maybe because I had everything once," he said, "and it didn't help." The honesty in his voice startled her. She wanted to say something, to fill the silence, but Camilla sneezed, a tiny, absurd interruption that made both of them laugh. "Excuse you," Maribel said, dabbing the baby's nose. Nathan leaned forward, his tone soft. "She looks so much like you." Maribel smiled. "Except she sleeps better." He chuckled. "That's a gift. Hold on to it." They lingered long after the food had gone cold. It wasn't romance that filled the space between them. It was something quieter, built on the strange comfort of shared loss and borrowed strength. The next week, Nathan invited her to meet him downtown. "There's something I want to show you," he'd said over the phone. She hesitated but agreed. When she arrived, the building looked new. Brick facade, wide glass windows, a sign still covered by a tarp. Inside, the air smelled of paint and dust. Shelves lined the walls and boxes of diapers, formula, and children's books were stacked in neat piles. Maribel turned slowly, confusion flickering across her face. "What is this?" Nathan's voice came from behind her. "It's called the Camilla Project." She froze. "What?" He stepped forward, pulling the tarp from the sign. The name glowed softly in gold lettering. "A community center. For single parents mostly. Food pantry, free child care, job resource center. You'd be surprised how many people need help but don't know where to find it." Her throat tightened. "You named it after her?" "And after you," he said gently, "because you reminded me what compassion looks like when it's earned instead of bought." She blinked back tears. "Nathan, this is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly. "You were right that I can't fix everything, but I can build something that makes the next person's road less impossible." Maribel took a step closer to the shelves, running her fingers along the smooth wood. "You really did all this?" "With help," he said. "And I'd like you to run it." Her head snapped up. "Me? Who else?" he asked, smiling faintly. "You know what it's like to need and to survive. That makes you qualified in ways degrees can't." Her hands shook. "Nathan, I don't know how to run anything. I don't even have a resume anymore." "I'll teach you what I can," he said. "The rest you already know." For a long time, she couldn't speak. The idea felt impossible and yet completely right. Lucas's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "Do good, but don't wait for applause." She looked up at Nathan. "Why do you trust me with this?" "Because you're the reason it exists," he said. "And because I trust your heart more than I trust most people's intentions." Maribel laughed softly, tears spilling freely now. "You really don't take no for an answer, do you?" He shook his head. "Not when it matters." They spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking boxes, labeling shelves, and joking about how she should demand a higher salary she didn't even have yet. When the sun dipped low, they stood outside under the new sign, the city humming around them. Maribel looked at it one last time, whispering, "Lucas would have loved this." Nathan smiled. "Then maybe he's watching." She glanced sideways at him. "You believe that?" "I believe kindness leaves fingerprints," he said softly. "Some just take longer to see." Maribel nodded, her gaze fixed on the golden letters above the door. For the first time in years, her brother's memory didn't feel like an ache. It felt like direction. And in that quiet moment, she realized something simple but profound. She was no longer surviving someone else's kindness. She was finally ready to pass it on. The grand opening wasn't grand at all. No press, no speeches, no ribbon cutting. Just a paper sign taped to the glass door that read, "Open, come in if you need something." That was exactly how Maribel wanted it. She arrived before sunrise with Camilla strapped to her chest and a thermos of coffee clutched in her hand. Nathan was already there, kneeling on the floor, unboxing supplies. His hair was a mess, his sleeves rolled up, and his expression oddly peaceful. "You don't sleep, do you?" she teased. "Only between crises," he said, smiling faintly. "You're early." "So are you." "Boss sets the example," he said, handing her a clipboard. Maribel blinked. "Boss?" "You," he said simply. "You're the director. You run this place now." The title didn't fit her yet. It felt like a borrowed jacket, but hearing it made her stand a little taller. They spent the first hour arranging everything. Diapers stacked in neat pyramids, cans of formula labeled and shelved, clothes sorted by size. A nurse from a local clinic arrived with a box of medical pamphlets. A young man dropped off bags of groceries, saying his church group wanted to help. By noon, the door opened to the first visitor, a mother about Maribel's age, holding a toddler with tired eyes and a dirty blanket. "Is this free?" the woman asked, hesitating at the entrance. "Everything here is," Maribel said. "Take what you need." The woman's relief came in waves she tried to hide. She filled a bag slowly, touching each item like she was afraid it would vanish. When she left, she whispered, "Thank you." And Maribel thought her chest might burst from the simplicity of it. Nathan watched from the corner, leaning against the counter, his arms crossed. That's why this exists, he said quietly. Maribel nodded. You built it. He shook his head. No, you made it real. By the end of the first week, the shelves weren't as full, but the space was alive. People came in with stories disguised as small talk. A father who'd just been laid off, a teenage girl hiding a pregnancy, a grandmother raising her grandson after her daughter's overdose. Maribel listened to each of them, never pushing, never judging. She learned that sometimes help wasn't a bag of food or a donated stroller. It was a place where no one looked away. Nathan showed up most days, though she could tell he tried not to interfere. He'd fix things quietly, a leaky faucet, a broken cabinet, then disappear to take calls in the back office. The staff adored him, but they always deferred to her, and that made him smile. You're a natural, he told her one afternoon while they stocked shelves. I'm just learning as I go, she said. That's what leadership is, he replied. She paused, meeting his eyes. You talk like someone who's been practicing it forever. He smiled. I've been practicing control forever. Leadership's different. Because it requires heart? Because it requires trust, he said. Something I used to be terrible at. Maribel tilted her head. And now? Now I'm better, he said. Because of you. She looked down, embarrassed. You give me too much credit. Not possible. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, comfortable. The kind of silence that says everything words would ruin. A month later, the first donation drive brought in more than they'd imagined. Boxes from strangers, checks from small businesses, volunteers who'd heard about the center through word of mouth. Nathan handed her the ledger, grinning. You know this isn't normal, right? Most places don't explode like this. Maribel laughed. Don't say explode. It's bad luck. He chuckled. Fine. Blossom. Flourish. Pick your metaphor. Flourish, she said softly, running her finger over the total. Lucas used to say flowers don't bloom because someone tells them to. They bloom because the soil finally gives them a chance. Nathan leaned on the counter. He sounds like someone I would have liked. You would have, she said. You remind me of him sometimes. He raised an eyebrow. Reckless and stubborn? Exactly, she said, smiling. Their laughter faded into something quiet again. Outside, the city lights flickered across the window, reflections dancing on the glass. Can I tell you something? Nathan asked suddenly. Always. I didn't build this just for you, he said, or for Lucas. I built it because I needed to prove something to myself. That wealth doesn't mean distance. That redemption can be practical. She studied him, her voice barely a whisper. You already proved it. He shook his head. No, you did. I just followed. The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. It wasn't flattery. It was truth, heavy and disarming. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For letting me be part of something that matters. Nathan smiled. You are something that matters. She looked away quickly, blinking back a sudden warmth behind her eyes. That night after closing, Maribel lingered by the window, watching the street empty. Nathan was in the back room locking up. The city was quiet, a rare calm before the next day's storm of humanity. She reached into her bag and pulled out Lucas's old photograph, the one of him and Nathan at the construction site. She'd framed it and hung it on the office wall, just above the door. It felt right. When Nathan came out, she nodded toward it. He'd want to see what we did. Nathan looked at the photo, then at her. He'd be proud. She smiled softly. So would Mason. Nathan's breath caught, surprise flickering in his expression. You remember his name? Of course, she said. You told me once that love doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Maybe this place is what it became. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a heartbeat neither of them spoke. The room was filled with quiet gratitude and something else that didn't need naming. Finally he said, Go home. You've built enough miracles for one day. She laughed, slipping on her coat. You're coming tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it. As she left, she turned the sign to closed. The reflection of the Camilla project glowed faintly in the glass, and for the first time she realized it wasn't just a name, it was a promise. The Camilla project had been open 3 months when the cracks began to show. Not in the walls or the shelves, but in Maribel herself. She didn't notice at first. The center had grown faster than anyone expected. Families lined up before dawn, volunteers rotated through shifts, and donations flooded in until the storage room overflowed. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes more, balancing budgets, fielding calls, soothing crying toddlers, and holding the hands of mothers who reminded her too much of herself. It was beautiful. It was exhausting. She told herself she was fine. That exhaustion was just the price of purpose. But each night, when she carried a sleeping Camilla to the car, the silence began to feel heavier. Nathan saw it before she did. "You're running yourself into the ground," he said one evening, leaning against the counter while she organized boxes of formula. "I'm managing," she said, not looking up. "You're surviving," he corrected. "There's a difference." She sighed. "Nathan, we've got 50 new families registered this week. I don't have time to slow down." He folded his arms. "You'll have no time at all if you collapse." She shot him a look. "Don't treat me like I'm fragile." "I'm not," he said softly. "I'm treating you like someone who matters." The words hung in the air, sharp and disarming. Maribel busied herself with the inventory list to hide the tremor in her hands. "You sound like my brother." Nathan smiled faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It was," she admitted. A few days later, the problem arrived disguised as opportunity. A local reporter showed up, camera crew in tow. She said she wanted to feature the Camilla Project in a weekend story, a heartwarming piece about hope and humanity. Maribel hesitated, but Nathan encouraged it. "It could help more people find us," he said. So she agreed. The next morning, the segment aired. By noon, the center's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The donations doubled again. The volunteer list tripled. And for the first time, Nathan couldn't get through the crowd to reach her office. Maribel stood by the front desk, surrounded by chaos that looked suspiciously like success. "You did this," Nathan said when he finally found her. "You made people care." She smiled weakly. "Care doesn't organize shelves." He laughed. "Then maybe we hire help." But the truth was, she didn't want help. She'd built this from the ground up, piece by piece, out of grief and willpower. Letting someone else run it felt like losing control of the one thing that made her life make sense. That night, after everyone left, she sat at her desk staring at the ledger. Her reflection in the dark window looked older, worn. Lucas's photo hung above the door, watching her. She whispered to it, "I'm trying. I really am." Camilla stirred in her stroller beside the desk, and Maribel ran a hand over her tiny fingers. "You deserve better than a tired mom," she murmured. "I think she'd disagree," said a voice from the doorway. She turned. Nathan was there, coat draped over one arm, tie loose. "You're still here?" "So are you," he said, "which means I win the Who Worries More contest." Maribel chuckled softly. "You never stop, do you?" "Neither do you," he said. He stepped closer, his voice gentler. "You don't have to carry everything alone." She wanted to tell him she was fine, that she'd handled worse, but the truth was written in the ache behind her eyes. He noticed. "Let me take you both to dinner tomorrow. No work, just air." "Nathan, no arguments," he said. "Even heroes need to eat." She smiled despite herself. "Fine, but you're paying." "I'd be offended if I wasn't," he said, and left her laughing for the first time that day. Dinner turned into something neither of them planned. They met at a small family-owned restaurant near the lake, a place with wooden tables, warm lighting, and the sound of soft jazz humming under conversation. Nathan had chosen it, claiming the menu was impossible to screw up. For the first few minutes, they talked about safe things, Camilla's latest tooth, the center's progress, the absurd amount of donated baby formula. But somewhere between the main course and dessert, the conversation shifted. "Do you ever regret it?" Maribel asked quietly. "Starting over?" He didn't answer right away. "Regret what I lost, yes, but not where it led me." She nodded. "Sometimes I feel guilty for being happy again." "Guilt is just grief in disguise," he said. "You're allowed to let it go." Her eyes glistened. "I wish Lucas could see this." "He can," Nathan said softly. Every time someone leaves that center with hope in their hands, he's there. So is Mason. So is every person we've lost. Maribel swallowed hard. Do you really believe that? I have to, he said. Otherwise, what's the point of surviving? She smiled through her tears. You're better at this hope thing than I am. I've had a good teacher, he said. The air between them changed, gentle, charged, the way still water trembles before wind touches it. Camilla giggled in her stroller, breaking the spell. Nathan laughed first. Good timing. Maribel smiled, wiping her eyes. She's keeping us honest. She's keeping us human, he said, something I almost forgot how to be. When they left, the city was quiet. The lake shimmered in the distance, catching the moonlight. Nathan walked her to her car, hands in his pockets. Thank you, she said. For dinner? For reminding me that peace isn't selfish. He hesitated, then nodded. You give so much of yourself away, Maribel. Promise me you'll save some of it for you. I'll try, she said. He smiled. That's all I'm asking. She opened the door, but before she got in, she turned. Nathan? Yeah? I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't sat beside me on that flight. He met her gaze, voice soft. Neither do I. For a moment they stood there, the night holding them still. Then he stepped back, letting her go. As she drove away, he watched the taillights fade into the mist. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel haunted by the past, only grateful that fate, in its quiet way, had chosen to give them both a second chance. The next few weeks moved quietly, the way healing often does, slow, almost invisible, but steady. The Camilla Project had found its rhythm. Volunteers knew their routines, new families came and went, and the shelves rarely stayed full for long. The place had become more than a center. It was a heartbeat. Maribel's days were still long, but they carried a new kind of balance. She laughed more. She trusted herself more. And sometimes, in rare golden moments, she even rested. Nathan visited often, though never with fanfare. He would appear mid-afternoon, sleeves rolled up, carrying coffee and something unnecessary but kind. New picture books for the reading corner, a blanket for Camilla, flowers that looked too alive for their boss. He said he came to help, but Maribel had started to realize he came to belong. One Thursday afternoon, when the center was closing, she found him in the storage room fixing a broken shelf. You don't have to do that, she said, leaning against the doorway. He didn't look up. You say that every time. And you ignore me every time. That's the foundation of our friendship, he said, tightening a screw. She smiled. Friendship, is that what this is? He paused, glancing up at her. Do you want it to be something else? The question landed like a held breath. The air between them shifted, subtle, electric. Maribel hesitated. I don't know what I want, she admitted. For so long, all I've known is survival. Everything after that feels foreign. Nathan put down the screwdriver. Then start small. Want dinner. Want sleep. Want to see your daughter grow up safe. The rest can wait. She looked at him, grateful and unsettled all at once. You make everything sound simple. It's not, he said, but sometimes simple is enough. That weekend, the center hosted its first community dinner, a thank you for volunteers and donors. Tables lined the main hall, candles flickered in jars, and the sound of laughter replaced the usual hum of need. Maribel wore a soft blue dress, borrowed from one of the volunteers, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. Camilla toddled between tables, clutching a cookie in both hands. Nathan stood at the back, watching her with quiet pride. When she caught his gaze, he raised his glass slightly, a silent toast. She smiled and shook her head. After dinner, as guests trickled out, Nathan found her stacking plates in the kitchen. You did it, he said. We did it, she corrected. This place, these people, it's all of us. He leaned against the counter. You know, you should get used to this. To what? Changing lives. She laughed softly. I'm just keeping the lights on. No, he said, voice steady. You're keeping people from falling through the cracks. That's rarer than you think. Maribel set the plates aside and looked at him. You say things that make me believe in myself, and I hate how much I need that. Nathan smiled faintly. You don't need me to believe in you. You already do. You just forget sometimes. Her chest tightened. You talk like you know me better than I know myself. Maybe I just pay attention, he said. The following Monday, the rhythm broke. Nathan didn't show up. At first, she didn't think much of it. He had business meetings, she assumed, maybe travel. But then another day passed, then two. His calls went unanswered, texts unread. By the fourth day, she was pacing the office, worry blooming like an ache she didn't have a name for. She didn't realize how much she'd come to depend on his presence. Not just his help, but his quiet steadiness, the way he anchored her without trying. On the fifth day, a man in a dark suit appeared at the door asking for her. Ms. Cruz? She nodded cautiously. Yes? He handed her an envelope. Mr. Hale asked me to deliver this. Before she could ask questions, he was gone. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a single page. Maribel, by the time you read this, I'll be away for a few days. A board matter came up, something I've been avoiding for too long. Don't worry, I'm fine. I just need to face the life I left behind before I can decide what comes next. Take care of the center. Take care of her. You're stronger than you realize. Nathan. She read it twice, then pressed the letter against her chest. Relief washed through her first, followed by something else. Something sharp and quiet and terrifying. She missed him. Not just his help, not just his kindness. Him. That night after closing, she sat alone in the quiet center. Camilla slept in her stroller, a tiny bundle of peace. Maribel looked up at the photo of Lucas on the wall and whispered, You really did send him, didn't you? Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and familiar. She picked up her phone, thumb hovering over Nathan's number. Then she typed, We're okay, but it's not the same without you. No response came, just the hum of the heater and the rhythm of the rain. Still, she left the message there, a small piece of honesty in the quiet. And as she turned off the lights, she smiled faintly. He'd said once that gratitude wasn't a transaction, that it was supposed to change you. He was right, because now, even without him, she knew how to keep the lights on. A week later, she arrived early to find a familiar black SUV parked outside. Nathan stood by the door, hands in his pockets, rain soaking his hair. You're supposed to be in meetings, she said, half angry, half relieved. I was, he said. Then I realized I'd rather be here. You can't just disappear like that. I know, he said, but I needed to make sure I came back for the right reasons. And did you? He smiled, tired, honest, hopeful. Yeah, I did. She shook her head, but her heart was already forgiving him. Next time, she said, send a text. He laughed. Deal. Camilla stirred in her arms, yawning, then reached for him. Nathan took her carefully, his expression soft. She missed you, Maribel said. I miss both of you, he replied. And just like that, the rhythm returned. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. Spring came quietly that year. The rain softened. The trees around Green Lake shimmered green again, and the air smelled faintly of renewal. The Camilla project was thriving, more than Maribel could have dreamed. The once empty walls now held art from local children, photos of families who'd found their footing, and letters of thanks tacked up with thumbtacks and hope. Every morning began the same, unlocking the doors, turning on the lights, brewing the first pot of coffee, and hearing the low hum of the city waking up outside. But beneath the rhythm was something steadier, contentment. Maribel had never known what peace felt like until she stopped waiting for the world to collapse. Nathan showed up more often again, though this time it wasn't to fix things or oversee projects. Sometimes he'd help stock shelves. Sometimes he'd read to a group of children in the playroom, his deep voice softening over every page. The mothers adored him. The kids called him Mr. Nathan and followed him like ducklings. For Maribel, his presence had become as natural as sunlight. She didn't overthink it anymore. She didn't question why he stayed or what he wanted. He was just there, and that was enough. One morning as she restocked the pantry, she heard his voice behind her. You've built something remarkable. She smiled without turning. We've built it. No, he said softly. You did. I just funded your stubbornness. She laughed. Then that makes us even. He leaned against the doorframe. Actually, I came to talk about that. About what? Evening the scales, he said. She frowned, setting down a box of cereal. Nathan, we've talked about this. You don't owe me anything. I know, he interrupted. But I owe Lucas. And Mason. And maybe myself. I've been thinking about what's next. Maribel turned to face him. Next? He nodded. The foundation wants me back full time. There's a project overseas that needs leadership. It's important work. The words hit harder than she expected. You're leaving. For a while, he said gently. Not forever. Maribel's throat tightened. You don't have to explain. You've already done more than enough. That's not what this is, he said. This isn't running away. It's finishing something I started before I met you. I know, she whispered. He stepped closer. Hey, look at me. She did, reluctantly. You changed everything, he said. This place, these people. You gave them more than help. You gave them dignity. I thought money could buy redemption. You proved it has to be lived. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. You talk like you're not coming back. I will, he promised. But when I do, I want this to be yours. Completely. It already is. He smiled. Good. Then I can go knowing it's in the right hands. Maribel took a deep breath. Where will you go? Cambodia first, he said. Building clinics and schools. It's something Mason's mother and I talked about years ago. I owe her that much too. Does she know about all this? Maribel asked softly. She does, he said. We spoke last month. For the first time in years, it didn't hurt. She nodded slowly, her heart a mix of pride and sorrow. She must be proud of you. I hope so, he said. But if she isn't, that's all right. I'm proud of me. And that's new. They both laughed then, a fragile sound that felt like light breaking through clouds. 2 weeks later, the entire community gathered for Nathan's farewell dinner. The center was full, families, volunteers, kids running under tables, the smell of food and celebration filling every corner. Maribel stood near the front, watching Nathan talk to a group of donors. He looked relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. Lighter, freer. When he caught her eye, he raised a glass. To second chances, he said. To second chances, she echoed, smiling through the sting of goodbye. After the dinner, when the crowd had thinned, he found her standing by the mural on the back wall, a painted tree with names and handprints across it. Camilla's handprint was near the center, bright pink. Leave room for one more, Nathan said, dipping his hand into the paint tray. He pressed his palm against the wall beside Camilla's. Maribel laughed softly. You're part of it now, permanently. He wiped his hand on a towel. That was always the point. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. What's this? Something I found cleaning out old files, he said. Lucas's handwriting. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. The note was simple. If something ever happens to me, remind her that help isn't weakness. It's proof you're still worth saving. Maribel pressed a hand to her mouth, tears spilling freely now. He really said that? He wrote it after I met him, Nathan said. Maybe he knew we'd both need it someday. She looked up, voice breaking. You kept this all these years? I kept it because I didn't understand it, he said. Until you. There was nothing left to say. She stepped forward and hugged him, firm, unguarded, real. For a long moment, neither moved. When they finally pulled apart, Nathan brushed a tear from her cheek. Take care of her, he whispered. I always will, she said, and you take care of yourself. I'll try, he said, smiling. That's all any of us can do. Months later, a letter arrived from Phnom Penh. It was short, just a photo of Nathan standing beside a half-built school and a note in his familiar handwriting. Still building, still grateful. Tell Camilla the kids here love her name. I'll be home soon. Maribel pinned the photo on the office wall next to Lucas's. 2 men, different worlds, same legacy. That evening, as she locked up the center, she turned off the lights and stood in the doorway, looking back at what they'd built. Camilla's laughter echoed from the hallway, bright, full, fearless. Maribel smiled, closing the door gently behind her. The world outside was still uncertain, still imperfect, but she had learned something from every moment of loss and grace. That help, when freely given, doesn't just save, it multiplies. And in the quiet glow of the streetlights, she whispered to the night, "Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Lucas. We're still building."